So Thomas Newkirk asks you, who will sign first, Cam Newton or Jameis Winston?
Man, I don't know. And I know you've heard this, and you tell me wrong if there's any other rumors out there right now. I haven't heard diddly shit about Jameis Winston.
I
So
agree.
I don't know when that happens. I don't know anybody in the NFL that knows when this thing will happen with Jameis Winston. You've heard me pound the drum for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'd be mad if the Philadelphia Eagles got Jameis Winston. I don't think it's crazy. I mean, Carson Wentz has an injury history. Do we really want to, like, if he gets hurt, go down the Nate Sudfeld road? I'm not a believer in Nate Sudfeld to be able to
Yeah.
take over and win games for that team. So I would think about that a little too if I was them. But, right now, yeah, you make me bet. I'm going to say Cam Newton gets signed first.
And just a few hours ago on Pro Football Talk, they wrote about this was coming from Michael David Smith, saying that Bruce Arians has reached out to a couple teams about Jameis Winston, recommended that he sign him, but neither team is looking at him as a starter. And I think you've said as much that it's not going to be a starter job for Jameis Winston, which leads to another question. Whiskey Tango says, is Jameis past the point where the other coaches think they can fix him? That's interesting.
No,
It's
yeah,
like,
it is interesting. Go ahead. I
what
didn't
do you
mean to
think?
cut you off. This is the
No,
damn hard thing
because
about
I think
FaceTime.
because Bruce Arians, you got Bruce Arians here, and you feel like if anyone can kind of harness the power of Jameis Winston, it's Bruce, and it didn't work out there, and so all the other coaches look at him and say no, can't be done. Although coaches do have pretty big egos out there, and so all of them probably feel like they could do it.
That's right. And, I mean, again, and Bruce Arians, too, to that conversation, he's not necessarily known for like reining quarterbacks in. I mean, quarterbacks have thrown a lot of interceptions and had a lot of turnovers with Bruce Arians. I wouldn't say his MO is to make quarterbacks more conservative that way. No, I mean, we're already talking about he'll make Tom Brady more aggressive because Brady's not aggressive enough. That's his MO. So I'm not so sure he was necessarily the proper voice for Jameis Winston either. I do think there's listen, I don't have to think. I know this. And I think I forget where I say this all the time, but I know a number of coaches in football who are like, man, Chris, have you studied Jameis Winston? And I go, yes. And they're like, man, I'd love to get my hands on him. Holy cow. The same thing that we've been saying for the last year. You look at a good game from Jameis Winston, it's as good as anybody in football. It's just the bad games are piss poor horrible, and that's where it stinks. But I do think there's some interest, and I think as we get later on in free agency, and maybe after the draft, and teams figure out who they did and didn't get, and I'm not so sure I'm really comfortable with this guy being our backup. Can we really trust him? I think that's when the Jameis, those teams who then don't get that guy in the draft to come in and be that next guy. I think those are the teams that will eventually start to kick the tires on Jameis Winston and go, okay, do we want to bring him here and have him be our backup? The problem is he's so talented too, Ahmed, that a lot of teams aren't going to want to deal with it. When you're that talented, they don't like a backup quarterback that talented. They don't want their backup quarterback to go on the field every day and shit on their starter and make their starter look like he's physically the backup. That is a big part of this too. There's going to be some teams out there that go, this is going to create a mess. He could go out in the preseason and throw 3 touchdowns in the first 3 preseason games, and our starter could kind of stumble, and everyone's going to go, man, Jameis Winston looks really good. And all of a sudden, you got a quarterback competition on your hand. So I do think that's going to scare a number of teams away, too.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.